Welcome, Mr. Kohli, to ShivAdiAnt. Does Operation Sindoor mark the official end of India's era of strategic restraint?
India identifying terrorism as an act of war.
What does leadership mean to you in a party where public visibility often trumps backstage influence?
How do you define a leader? Someone who stands up and then expects to create an example that people would like to emulate. I'd made a prediction at that time that Mrs. Sonia Gandhi would be president of the Congress.
One Supreme Court verdict that changed the course of Indian politics. In the corporates, 58% of the youth or the young professionals, they feel frustrated by this.
Because the ambiguity is the lack of clarity they are getting.
How does the party prepare its public messaging in the same context when legal verdicts, they challenge deeply held ideological patterns?
Media cell has a set of professionals who the lack of civility will cost us our civilization.
How do you view this structural bias that the first generation lawyer faced? Welcome back to ShivAdiAnt, a place where campus confusion, corporate chaos, and the unspoken truth finally meet the mic. And today, we have someone truly special. He is a senior advocate in Supreme Court of India, a national BJP spokesperson. He brings rare quality of harmonizing legal and political issues in his communication. We have seen him in addressing Article 370, debates on CAA, UCC, and now in Operation Sindoor, Mr. Nalin Kohli. Welcome, Mr. Kohli, to ShivAdiAnt. It's a truly honor to have you and host you on the podcast.
Thank you, Kunal.
Let's begin with what's unfolding in the past few days. And I'm going to start with April 22nd, when 26 of the Hindus were targeted and brutally killed in Pahalgam by the cowardly state of Pakistan. At that time, I was angry and anguished as an Indian. But then I was made proud by the way our armed forces conducted Operation Sindoor. A precise attack on the state of Pakistan. And since then, we have witnessed a lot of escalation, retaliations, ceasefire, which was immediately violated. And since then, even though the ceasefire is on now, there is still a tension. So, Mr. Kohli, as a BJP national spokesperson and a constitutional voice, how do you interpret this evolving situation? And does Operation Sindoor mark the official end of India's era of strategic restraint?
There are several ways to look at it. The first is obviously the incident of 22nd April at Pahalgam was horrific, barbaric, where the terrorists, and they are Pakistan-based, we have a long history, there's intelligence information on it. We know that where it comes from and what nature it takes, the brutality and the messaging crossed every limit. Because A, they sought out Hindus, then identified them through various means, including a physical verification of their body parts to see if they were non-Muslims. And then they were shot dead at point-blank range before their family, children, wives, sisters, friends. And then these traumatized families were expected to carry the message further. Prime Minister Modi's government came out with a set of responses. Now, if you look at the set of responses, the first responses are economic. Suspension or putting in abeyance the Indus Water Treaty, stopping all sorts of trade, visas, return of nationals, a whole set of measures. The second leg of it was diplomatic, reaching out to the global community, and everyone stood by India, condemned that terrorist act. And it's across, whether we look at the Middle East, whether it is Saudi Arabia, whether it is Iran, whether it is many countries there, Europe, America, Asia, it was unequivocal. So from an era where few voices spoke and took India's point of view, now the global community and recognized that this was an act of terror. That act of terror on 22nd of April was the first attack or assault on India. India responded under Prime Minister Modi, which is the military aspect. The first leg of that was attack and destroy terrorist hideouts or identified places. No civilian, no military. Targets were identified. When Pakistan escalated, the next leg happened, and what we've seen finally is India sending a message that no place in Pakistan is safe, including what is close to their nuclear command center. It's the command center itself. Every airbase is within target. Our air defense mechanisms are capable of preventing anything from Pakistan's side to come into India. We can strike where we wish. That's what Operation Sindoor clearly sent. And while our armed forces have done great service to the country and a brilliant job, they have defended the motherland and taken up and achieved the objectives that was given onto them. The political will is clear that now the new norm is that terrorism will be treated to be an act of war, and we reserve our right to respond in the manner we deem appropriate.
Great. So if I get this correct, so the Operation Sindoor marks the official end of India's era of strategic restraint.
I would not choose words the way you are. I would say what we see after Pahalgam is India identifying terrorism as an act of war and reserving its right to respond as it deems fit. It's certainly not an act of friendship. 2, India or Bharat would now not go on terms that are determined by an enemy state. Terror and talks have not been taking place together. That's been the stand of Prime Minister Modi's government. Blood and water will not flow. That's the message of the keeping in abeyance the Indus Water Treaty. What our armed forces have displayed is the depth, the width, and the capacity to take down targets in our response to anything that we deem to be an act of war. And terrorism is an act of such nature for us.
Got it. Thank you for that. Now I'm going to move from the Operation Sindoor to the leadership for a moment. Now, when I go and talk to people in the corporates, most Indian CXOs, they think of legal as risk avoidance and not risk navigation. But your career reflects something deeper, using legal frameworks to structure strategy. And I have some facts to corroborate that. As per McKinsey, 82% of companies that consistently outperform have legal counsel embedded in its strategic decision making. And only 11% of India's CXOs feel confident interpreting contracts or regulatory frameworks. So, Mr. Kohli, what's one habit from your legal training that every CXO, MBA, or policy leader should adopt, not for court, but for boardroom clarity?
Preparation. It's as simple as that. You have to prepare for whatever you do. And in a society that is governed on the principles of rule of law, how can corporate India or the business world or economic entities or those who are driving the wheels of the economy not be aware of and not participate in the wheels of law which run the economy? So I think legal involvement in the good times is as critical as legal involvement when you have a challenge and you have to be in a court of law or in an arbitration. And as a practicing senior advocate at the Supreme Court, as you are aware, I've been designated as a senior advocate by the Honorable Supreme Court of India. My suggestion or advice is follow the good old English idiom, a stitch in time saves 9. If you're making a contract, rather than hastening the process and running through it, take the advice of the experts who in contractual law in the necessary field. There are enough models available that ensure that the clauses for dispute avoidance, and in case there is a dispute resolution are embedded
Yeah.
into that contract or document or agreement, understanding, whatever. Therefore, it prevents courts interpreting it if the document itself is well written out at the beginning. So I would strongly urge people, and many corporates now do have in-house general counsels, but where required, they should also take the advice of good law firms or senior advocates who could advise them on that, because every field has a amount of expertise that's required. And if that's invested in there, it prevents litigation or disputes down the line.
Yeah. And just to follow up, so do you think legal foresight is becoming a kind of leadership currency at this time?
There's no choice.
Yeah.
I joke and say that everyone at some point or the other needs to have a doctor as a friend, because as human beings, we do fall ill.
Yeah.
And we reach out to medical professionals. Similarly, in the course of life that we navigate, we will have a brush with law in one way or the other. Even if it is not about invocation of our rights and then approaching the court, it could be someone else challenging our rights and taking us to court. So it's multiple factors that require us to engage with legal professionals, as in lawyers, law firm, advisory, all of it. And then the third is, of course, you require the chartered accountant to manage your finances in terms of compliances. So now we can extend that to the company secretary in company law. We can extend it to the software field if you have the architecture of softwares or artificial intelligence to run your processes. So you do have it, but broadly speaking, I tend to say that at a general level, not expertise level, every human being in a society at some point or the other is definitely going to seek medical help, legal help, and financial help. It could be the loan for a house, for a car, but it does require structuring.
Yes. Awesome. Now, I'm just going to move to the spotlight. Okay. You have really chased the spotlight. And while I was doing as a lead up to this, you have consistently represented BJP during some of the nation's most complex moments, whether it's abrogation of Article 370, CAA, or electoral bonds. It's kind of a leadership that I don't see often. Calm, strategic, and behind the scene. What does leadership mean to you in a party where public visibility often trumps backstage influence? And how should young professionals think leadership in a high-pressure political ecosystem?
Many questions embedded into what you're asking, Kunal. The first is, how do you define a leader? Is a leader in the classic sense someone who stands up and then expects to create an example that people would like to emulate?
Yeah.
Then there is another way people define leaders, is that one who gets the team to perform very well without necessarily being in the front, but gets all resources to work. It's a different sort of leadership. There's a third that takes decision making without looking at the immediate, but looks at the very long-term consequences.
Correct.
Which means what I'm doing today may be painful today, but in the future, you will thank me when I'm no longer there, which is what you use the word as a statesman. So leadership at different points can mean different things, and for different people can mean different models.
Yeah.
But what I think is important, irrespective of whatever, earning the respect of your colleagues, and out of respect, getting them to value what you say and hence adhere to that or follow it or take those suggestions and put it into action, is the sort of leadership that perhaps in the corporate world would matter most, rather than it being directional, which is do this, do this, do this.
Yeah.
It's an engagement and then working out in the larger corporate goals what is better or best for the organization.
So I still want you to talk about, and this is very close to my heart. How does young professional rethink leadership in a high-pressure political systems or ecosystem?
So I think a lot of young professionals who meet me and say, I want to join politics.
Yes.
Or how do I become a leader?
Yeah.
So I say, what is it you're chasing?
Mm-hmm.
Are you chasing a target and a task or a post?
Wow.
There's a huge difference. There's enough work to be done. You don't need to be in a post or hold a position
Yeah.
to be able to do work. A position or a post, those who chase, is driven by personal motivation
Mm-hmm.
to a very large extent. How can we say there's not work that can, how can it be said that work won't be done if you don't have a position? And people can make a difference. That is leadership too. It could be as small as helping one small end professional, self-employed professional, somebody maybe like someone selling something on the footpath,
Yeah.
to navigate a better way forward, to understand that if he took and in intervening into that life and process to improve and give them a quantum leap. For example, take labor. Often they don't have skill, they have the skills, but they don't have the tools.
Yeah.
What about giving them tools? What about training them for better delivery? Now, somebody bends and picks up, say, something from the ground. You keep bending, you keep standing, bending, standing. It's not efficient, but there's no choice. But suppose you have a tool, only to lift and pick, lift and pick. So you don't need to bend, which makes you faster, more efficient. And telling them this is the right technique. I'm going really at the base level. So for anyone who aspires to nation build, the starting point is a self-inspection. What are you looking for in this? If you're looking to build the nation, then build it. Do your bit. If everyone does their bit, the nation is going to be built together.
Yeah.
You don't need a position for that. A position would be of large-scale work, which means a policy impacts millions, positively, negatively. Obviously, the aim is that it has a more positive outlook and output. So that's how I do. And I think I would urge the youth that while they're chasing their career goals, while they're chasing their personal goals, they should do something for society, no matter how small, it doesn't matter. If you build into your normal routine and your concern something without an expectation to make an incremental or a minor change in a human being's life, without even bothering for the credit, that's the purest nation building that you could do.
And I define that, what you just said, as integrity. Doing something when no one is watching.
It doesn't matter if people watch or they don't. It shouldn't matter either way. How does it matter? If people watch or if they don't. If your purpose and your objective is so defined, like Arjun,
Yeah.
Chidiya ki aankh, which is the eye of the bird, then you're only focused to your task.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who says what, who does what, whether someone is watching you or ignoring you. How does it matter?
Yeah. And Mr. Kohli, just to staying on this, you touched a very important point, which is close to my heart is, and I think many people in my corporate that I speak with, they want to know this. How do we join BJP? Yes, there's a website I can go and log in and do some donation and join it. But from a corporate standpoint, many of us, we don't have time. We are working around the clock, but we still want to contribute. So your point of, just doing your bit and may take one thing at a time, maybe help someone, that's great. And I think most of the people nowadays are doing that as part of the CSR activities. And it's not a gimmick anymore. What I've seen a change, people do take a lot of interest in the CSR activities.
So let me build on this for a minute, Kunal. Let's talk of small changes.
Yeah.
Can we be polite to another human being?
Yes.
How does that need a position or a post? It doesn't.
Yeah.
Can we be civil and courteous? Can we help someone cross the road? It's just being aware. Very small, but it makes a difference. If we are short of time, can we be a little less impatient?
Wow.
How does it need you to be part of a political structure?
Yeah.
I think what I'm talking about is that basic human qualities and values, if we build on it, we are building the nation better. That is in our hand. That is in our hand. If we are, let's say, part of a project that builds a road, the money is still going to be spent. The contract will still be implemented. Can we do our job so well that at least we have a sense of pride we did it well? Why bother if the next guy didn't do it? Do your bit well. Good work stands out. It doesn't need credit. You have to do it because you value your work being so good that you're satisfied with that. Set a good satisfaction level for yourself and a higher standard for yourself. Be a better citizen. Your fundamental duties will come in place without you needing to read them also in the Constitution. Your fundamental rights, everybody knows. So if you have the right of free speech, it does not say you have the right of freely to abuse. And you exercise your right to free speech in a manner that you are able to communicate what you wish to say effectively, your emotions, your views, everything. But you can maintain it also in a civil manner. Now, of course, coming from me as a spokesperson and on television, we see the debates. Sometimes they do become personal, but I do my debates still as I believe it should be done. And I'm sometimes debating with the very people who may be fighting with another colleague. So I think a good response generally brings a good response. And I think that's what is nation building, that we all work towards improving our nation collectively. The political position will be elected by the people broadly. It doesn't stop us from doing our bit.
So what you're saying is there are better ways to support your
country. It's not about better ways. That these are equally important in our desire to serve the nation as somebody who may wish to join a political party. But even if you do join a political party, where does it stop you from doing all of this?
Exactly.
That's the point I'm making.
You have been in the helm of a lot of polarizing issues and policies and issues, and you have never crossed the line into personal attacks and any theatrics. And that takes restraint and belief. And most people don't see that kind of leadership. And I'm very honest about it. And I was so intrigued when I was doing this research. Among the youths, the young professionals, 68% found the BJP's legal response were more credible when delivered by you. And that's a fact from the public perception report. So my question to you is, how do you manage internal alignment with BJP's core ideology while still maintaining the legal restraint and balance required of a constitutional voice?
Well, thank you for that input. I mean, I haven't come across that input, what you just shared. So I'll be interested to see what the whole report is, because it's not just about me. There may be other issues that may be a learning for me. So I'd really welcome that. With regard to what you're asking, you have to, and I've also learned over the years, we all learn, and that's what life is about. You have to keep learning all the time. Never stops, and it should never stop. So I've learned that this is how I'd like to be, and this is how I'd like to communicate. I've been saying from 2012, the lack of civility will cost us our civilization. And I've used this one of my favorite lines that, it came to me at one point, so I've just been using it. The lack of civility will cost us our civilization. हम सभ्य बोलना बंद करेंगे तो हमारी सभ्यता भी हिल जाएगी. So I've at least implemented it as far as I'm concerned. Second, just as I'm approaching or arguing or presenting a case in a court, I do the same on television. To me, the audience is now the judge. That's all. So if I'm communicating to them, so I do it in the manner that I feel, how would I present my case in a court of law to a judge and hope that the judge would accept my point of view? So to me, the audience is the judge.
Well, that's you've put it so easily, but I'm sure that requires a lot of training, a lot of thoughts, and self-restraint.
Well, I've been 35 years in the media.
You don't look like you're 35 years into the media.
I started way back in 1989 when I started anchoring Youth Forum on Doordarshan.
Yes.
Just out of school.
Yes.
Then I got selected as a news anchor or newsreader on Doordarshan in 1993. I read the English news for 10 years. I was one of the 2 main primetime news anchors on Doordarshan in the last few years. Then I worked in the government with the Ministry of Rural Development with Mr. Venkaiah Naidu. He took me in. They gave me a very nice bureaucratic rank. He became party president. And Venkaiah, I followed him to the party, helped set up the media cell of the BJP, went on to head the media cell. So I've been a journalist in that sense. I've written for MSNBC on the internet. I wrote for MSNBC on the internet when Pokhran took place. I wrote, in fact, I made a prediction at that time that Mrs. Sonia Gandhi would be president of the Congress. And my article was published earlier. It was an assessment as a journalist.
And this was in which year?
I think somewhere in the late 90s. Somewhere in my old files, somewhere, because I've shifted home so many times. In some carton, I'm sure those articles are there because I saw it a few years ago. Both the Pokhran one, this also. So I've worked, as I said, in journalism or press. I worked in the executive briefly in the ministry.
Yeah.
I've been associated with politics, which is part of the, larger legislative pillar of the democracy. And I'm now a practicing senior advocate. So that's part of the judiciary or the legal network. So I've had I've had the good fortune of working in all the pillars of democracy in one way or the other.
You did. And, while I was doing the research, like you said, you began your career in journalism, anchoring in Doordarshan and telling stories to the nation. How does your background as a journalist shape the way that you now design political communication? And is there any blind spot that you believe today narrative machinery still has from your days since you joined Doordarshan?
So a journalist questions things. So it's information and you question what is behind the information. What is there? The best definition that I've heard of journalism is that journalism or news is something new in the public domain for the public good. Because only when you have an informed citizenship or citizenry, you will have a better democracy. So the important thing is that it has to be something new. And when I used to give lectures on journalism, I used to say, which is an old thing used across journalism schools, dog biting man is not news, but man biting dog is news. It's new. Then it is in the public domain. You have to put it out. It's not locked in a room for the public good. So therefore, that's what classically journalism is defined as. So my experience in the media and journalism, there was communication skills and it honed it. 2 was an inquisitive mind to collect more information and be aware for the larger things that are happening around you. Otherwise, it won't make sense to you when you're dealing with a certain input.
Yeah.
Working in the government gave me the understanding of the structure of how decision-making takes place, a file moves, the noting that takes place in a file. What is the system how decision-making is essentially in the government. And in politics, you deal with society, issues that are of relevance to society, vision for the betterment of society. And how do you motivate a voter to buy in what our party leadership is putting forth? So I've managed several elections in the Northeast as in charge of the party. And that's been one part of the journey. So I think all of it has. And what law finally has helped me is to understand and appreciate how each word matters.
Yeah.
Each word matters.
Yeah.
Its interpretation, its usage. And therefore, how you have to be careful in dealing with anything.
So what's the one blind spot you still think?
They change.
Mm-hmm.
In one case, it may be a blind spot that may come for something you didn't prepare or didn't anticipate. So you're constantly fighting with yourself internally to see you have no blind spots. But blind spots often are not the ones you have planned. They presented themselves because that is something which was beyond what you had comprehended. I won't buy that there is a blind spot per se.
That's great. And I'm going to move into something which is very interesting. When I was doing this research, you have had to operate in spaces where too much clarity can corner you, and too much ambiguity can be dangerous.
How do you say that?
From legal briefings to national press conferences. And some facts are so amazing. From Deloitte, 58% of young professionals, they feel so frustrated by some of the leaders which are there, which are too vague, And I was thinking about this, how should I put ambiguity to leadership? And then I thought of a question, how can future business and policy leaders strike the right balance between strategic ambiguity and decisive clarity?
Well, I think it's based on what is to be revealed and what is not.
Correct.
It's not very complicated.
Yes.
And that's how it is. I mean, if you have a strategy, there are elements you can't reveal. Like take what's happening in Operation Sindoor.
Yeah.
Our armed forces said we won't reveal certain things. We know. We are aware. We've done what we have done. We are aware. But it's not correct for us to reveal at the moment, which obviously will lead to ambiguity. It's but obvious because you've used the word quite carefully. Strategic ambiguity. It means not revealing what should not be revealed.
So would you say ambiguity, when used ethically, is now becoming a leadership tool?
It's not about ethicality. I wouldn't agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
That is a choice in terms of what you need to share beyond yourself or your core group in the larger interest of your organization. So your organizational interest, which obviously is aligned to nation building and to social benefit, because organizations, even though there is a profit motive, are essentially serving society because in the economy they are providing a service or a product that is for the benefit of a set of people or a larger set of people. So I think it's not about the manner in which you are putting it. I would say that it's just about serving your organizational interests by not revealing what should not be revealed. For example, would Coca-Cola reveal its formula? And if a question comes on that formula in a press conference or a court of law, they would probably select their words, which may, as you call it, be seen as ambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, it's not in their interest to reveal.
I'm with you in what you're saying, but like as I said, the stats say the other way. In the corporates, 58% of the youth or the young professionals, they feel frustrated by this.
No, I don't agree. I'll tell you why. Because the ambiguity is the lack of clarity they are getting. So you see, this is a glass with two elements to it, half empty and half full. So I think the ambiguity part is the half empty, what you don't reveal, but you have to successfully also, effectively reveal what is meant to be revealed. That is communication. So frustration will come if you don't have clarity about what you are communicating, about what you needed to communicate, what you were meant to communicate.
Yeah.
And if you, and on the other hand, what you don't need to communicate, or if you were to prevent its leak or did not want to, for strategic reasons, reveal it, if that is ambiguous and you have a lack of clarity on what had to be revealed, you will see frustration because the recipient of the message is not clear of what you wanted to do or what to say.
Yeah, and I'm not debating on that point, because my other facts, if I give the whole picture, 41% of the leaders, they said ambiguity is a deliberate strategy to preserve flexibility in complex environments.
Certainly, because you have not revealed or taken a position, you've not revealed a fact and not taken a position, it helps you navigate complex situations by being able to be adept at flexibly changing your position. But bear in mind, if the position is completely contrary to even what you indicated, that won't be seen as strategic maneuvering. That would be seen as retracting or confusion.
Thank you. Now I'm going to move quickly to the MBAs. And since I have a close connection, I go and speak to those students. I've seen most MBAs are taught how to read balance sheets. They're good at it, build business cases, and optimize operations. But very few know how to think legally. So, what's one thing you wish our MBA students and working professionals understood better
Good question.
about the law and not as rules?
Good question. It's, of course, a curricular
Yeah.
decision. But if you can add into the curriculum a few lectures on law, it would be useful. When you go to law school, you first learn how to read law. You tend to, and that's what it teaches you. It's not just about the practice of law, because the practice of law is after you practice it.
Yeah.
In real terms,
Well
the
said,
practical
yeah.
part to it. So I think if there's a little bit of an input on understanding, say, the Contract Act, what does it entail? The Arbitration Act, because a lot of things go into arbitration. Things like that, it would help. What are the basic criminal principles or jurisprudence that you have to keep in mind? What are your legal options under civil law? So if there is something like that, it would help people understand it. But it's a larger issue about whether the time in the in the course can permit introduction, and if something new is to be introduced, what is it going to be in terms of what has to be removed? Because
Yeah.
ultimately the days are fixed, and the what has to be the output in that given curriculum is predetermined. So it's a larger decision. Maybe it could be in the nature of an elective, which is not necessarily
Yeah. Correct.
part of the compulsory, but it could be additional classes and additional topics.
Yeah.
That would be useful, I think.
Yeah. All right. Moving on, in the past 18 months, the judiciary has delivered major rulings from striking down electoral bonds to upholding the abrogation of Article 370 and pushing the baton on same sex marriage to the parliament. Now, each of these directly impacted BJP's legislative authority. So, Mr. Kohli, where does the BJP draw the line between respecting judicial independence and asserting its democratically elected mandate, especially when the verdict do not align with the governance goals?
It's an important question, but you will have to re-look at how you are looking at it. The basic nature of a functional democracy as envisaged under our constitution is separation of powers. So the authority to make law is with the legislature, parliament, or the
Yeah.
state legislatures. The executive is for the implementation of that. And the courts have the power of judicial review. That's why they are independent of the law-making exercise. They have that power. That's how it is envisaged. Let me put it in a different way. Emergency was imposed in India in 1975 by the late Prime Minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi. She also when she imposed it, there was a judgment of the Supreme Court that says even fundamental rights could be suspended during emergency. Only one judge dissented, Justice H.R. Khanna. He was superseded, and by by someone who was 4 levels junior to him, but made the Chief Justice of India. He resigned. But the point I'm making is that that is not the position today. The position today, law is itself corrected that fundamental rights are supreme, which goes back to the basic structure document of the Constitution, that a basic feature cannot be altered. So fundamental rights is what is part of the basic structure of our Constitution, as is judicial review. So this is not a battle that you win or lose. This is how a democracy functions. And I think while the Parliament exercises under the same Constitution its right to make laws, amend laws, under the same Constitution, the courts look whether the laws passed are intra-virus or, in a sense, ultra-virus, the Constitution.
Very well said. How does the party prepare its public messaging in the same context when legal verdicts they challenge deeply held ideological patterns? How does the party respond? Like,
Well, there is a media cell. I was part of setting it up way back in
You did mention
2002.
that, yeah.
Media cell has a set of professionals who help out the spokespersons when they want help. Several of us don't require help on a regular basis because of the experience we already have over 25, 30, 40 years. And but some of our colleagues do like to lead in and ask for inputs, and it's very useful. With legal issues, often those who practice law are brought in, unless the press conference is purely on a political point.
And Mr. Kohli, I'm just going to move to the concept of leadership that we discussed a while ago. And in today's India, it is so interesting to look at these numbers. Leaders are expected to navigate just not the economy or team dynamics, but also regulation, policy, and public accountability. And I was looking at NASSCOM Pulse. 65% of Indian CEOs, they rate legal clarity as their weakest internal leadership skill. And 80% of the crises in high growth companies are escalated due to poor legal anticipation. So that's the numbers. Now, how can legal thinking become a core leadership competency, not just for lawyers, but for CEOs?
It's difficult because it's impossible. Even as a practicing senior advocate, every day I'm learning. So I think it's unending. But it's like a doctor, unending. So sometimes I give the example, I'm like a surgeon who's operating in an operation theater. I'm doing that in court. So, it's complex. But yes, I think involving or seeking advice and inputs when things are big, before they are launched, will help. That's why I used early on in my podcast and in response, preparation is important.
Yes.
So if you just put in some element of time or focus to having it legally vetted in the preparatory period, it may perhaps save some problems later.
So preparation is the key beforehand. And I'm going to come to legal framework for a moment. India produces over 25,000 law graduates annually, but only a fraction enter policy or governance. And when I look at these numbers from across the globe, they're staggering that in US, UK, or Israel, legal professionals, they transition into public office, civil services, or political advisory much higher than India. So is the BJP prepared to onboard the next level of legal technocrats like yourself, or are we still too dependent on
I think it's not just
veterans?
the BJP, it's overall. When India became a free country in 47, and you had the elections in the early 50s, I'm forgetting the figure, it was either 37% of the total parliamentarians or 47% had a legal background. It's a huge figure. You'll find it on the net. But it was a substantial part, approximately about 1/3 of the parliamentarians were lawyers, practicing or otherwise, but from the legal background. Today, I think it's less than 3%.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
so it's down. It's not about the BJP. I think it is about electability. Because elections are a ball game where the first person past the mile post is the winner. And winning an election is a combination of several factors.
Yeah.
I think the educational qualifications of one is a very limited, small factor in that.
So like in BJP, apart from you, Srimati Meenakshi Lekhi and Mr. Gaurav Bhatia are the veterans from the legal voice standpoint. But I still want to know, how is BJP aligned to get that next wave of folks like you? Is that something which is discussed or planned?
I haven't been in a discussion related to that. So that's something I really can't answer because I don't have information on it.
All right. Great. Thanks for that. And this is really interesting. In an age where social media rewards reaction speed, you have taken a different approach: low noise, high credibility. And some people do call it in this ecosystem as Kohli blueprint. And Kohli blueprint. And
Really? Okay.
Yes. And as
I
per
didn't
the
know about that.
public perception, you are viewed as a quite constant in the BJP. respected for staying out of unnecessary controversies while always being prepared, articulate, and legally rooted when it matters. So, Mr. Kohli, what's one personal discipline or philosophy that keeps you going when the spotlight fades, but when the stakes are really high?
So first, I have to thank you for many of the inputs that you are giving me that I honestly haven't heard about myself. It'll make interesting read for me because I haven't sought to know about it, and two, I didn't even realize that these kind of terms are used. So thank you for that.
You're really famous.
No, thank you for that. On what you're saying, how do I deal with it?
Yes, philosophy.
One is patience. Two is if you have, let me put it like this. To me, politics is a journey for a task to be done.
Yeah.
That task is to serve the people.
Yes.
And if it is meant to serve the people, therefore the effort is for them,
Yes.
not for you, then it can't matter that you are not doing it. Somebody should do it. The task is important. So, which brings me to me. I've been 22 years in the BJP.
Yes.
I joined in 2002, 23 years. And I've been associated for almost 10 years before that. Or from actually late 80s, almost 35 years. So the point is, I've seen politics closely. I've held positions. But to me, the position has always been just a means to an end. It's not the end.
Yeah.
So if, and whatever you do, do it honestly. That's all. Do it honestly, sincerely. That's all that matters. Now, if you have done well, you've done well because you needed to do it well for your own self too. The task was important.
Yeah.
So if you are focused on the task, how does it matter if somebody gives you credit for it or not? It doesn't matter after a point. So focus on the task, which is why I said at the beginning, nation building is if each one of us just does something small all the time.
Yes.
Whatever be the opportunity.
Yes.
Somebody as a CEO of a corporate may be able to educate 5,000 girl children, 20,000 labor,
Yeah.
getting them skills. Get drainage system organized in one colony.
Awesome.
Get litter free, one small area. Ensure that one school in a economically depressed area, its upkeep was there, the environment was conducive to children. Invested into the teachers there. There's no end to work.
Correct.
Why are we waiting always for the government?
Government, yes.
The government will do what it has to.
Yes.
But why can't we as Indians do our own little bit?
Correct.
That's all. So focus on the task, then everything else doesn't matter.
You make it sound so simple.
It's not simple. Trust me, I'm putting it simply. It's not simple. I'm leaving you with something to
Ponder
reflect
upon.
on. Because that's also our spiritual tradition. That's also our spiritual journey.
Yes.
You must introspect and think about all that.
Absolutely. And Mr. Kohli, one of the most important question everyone, when they knew that I'm going to interview you, came to me was, India's legal world is still shaped by chambers, lineage, and who you know, not just what you know. And some of the facts, and before I put the question, are staggering. A 2023 Bar Council of India survey showed that less than 12% of the top tier law firms, partner and senior advocates are first generation lawyers. And then junior lawyers without network, they often spend 3 to 5 years doing clerical work before even arguing in the court. So my question to you is, Mr. Kohli, as someone, like when I was doing some research on you, you mentioned this, that your inspiration to become in legal aspect came when you met Mr. late Arun Jaitley. Now, as someone, and your father was the governor of Assam. Mizoram. So, Mr. Kohli, as someone who didn't inherit a legal surname, but built his career through practice and performance, how do you view this structural bias that the first generation lawyer face?
It's no different to medicine. Ultimately, you become the lead surgeon only after you've got the skills in the operating theatre, not because you did surgery in medical school. So it's practice. That's why they say, do you practice law? It's the practice. It's like cricket. If you're on the field, a bowler, you get to play against a team only when you're fit enough to bowl. It may be a small team, maybe higher, maybe state, maybe national, maybe IPL, maybe international. It's practice and ability to be able to work in that circumstance and deliver. Ultimately, delivery matters. The outcome matters. So I think first generation can make it too. That's the first point. If you're a son of a doctor, you do have an advantage. If you're a son of a lawyer, you do have advantage, or a daughter of a lawyer. Because you've grown up with that lingo.
Yeah.
You've seen it. You've also grown up with the community around you. So many things are there, but it's not that first generation can't. In my family, nobody is in law.
Yeah.
So, but I made it
Yeah,
because of
you
hard
did.
work and determination and a little bit of blessings, because without blessings, nothing can happen.
Yes.
And I think if you have faith in the Almighty and your destiny, one can do it.
Yes.
And nature or your destiny gives you the indication, provided you're willing to listen.
And yet you leave something to ponder upon for everyone.
Thank you.
And just before we wrap up, I'm just going to switch gears, and this is something we do with every guest.
Sure.
And we call this as sprint byte. It's an analogy from corporate. It's sprint, fast, rapid, and byte. And these are first thought basis questions. We don't spend a lot of time on this. So I'm going to keep it very short for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready, okay.
One Supreme Court verdict that changed the course of Indian politics.
Keshavanand Bharati, the basic structure doctrine, because that established that the Constitution's basic structure couldn't change.
One misconception about BJP's legal strategy.
That the BJP does not prepare. If you look at Article 370, what the Prime Minister, the Home Minister, that's Narendra Modi ji and Amit Bhai Shah.
I remember that.
What they did and how they implemented it is phenomenal.
Yes.
It's a lesson of preparedness in terms of something that was purely legal and constitutional, and how it could even overcome the challenge to it.
Segue, if I still hear that speech from Mr. Amit Shah, it still gives me goosebumps. And I just loved him when he spoke, and I saw the rigor in him. I just loved it. One quality a legal leader in politics must absolutely have.
A legal leader in politics, I think, is doing the correct thing.
Yes.
Because you can't be a party to breaking the law.
Yeah. One sentence you would give to a young lawyer or an MBA thinking about joining public life.
First, strengthen yourself. Be a good professional. Make sure that you've taken care of all what you wish to do for your family, your friends, your aspirations. Then turn to serving the country. You can't do both. If you want to then give back to society, be in a position to give back.
Yes.
Otherwise, while trying to give to society, you will always take.
Wow. That's amazing. One word that defines your mission in BJP.
I think serving the people. It sounds cliche, but we owe it to our fellow citizens that if we ever get an opportunity to do something, we must do it to the best of our abilities, because we end up then changing people's lives.
Yeah. And Mr. Kohli, I want to say this, and we are moving toward a wrap, and this conversation has been enlightening in some ways for me as well, on a personal level. The simplicity with which you bring some of the hardest and complex questions to the surface.
Thank you.
And I just want to say it's an absolute honor to host you. And thanks for your time to give us this leadership masterclass and legacy masterclass.
Well, good luck with whatever you're doing, Kunal. And I wish through you, all the young professionals who are about to start their careers, in the process of building their careers, or are at some level in their careers, the very best. And my one hope would be that while they chase their dreams, which they must, work hard for their dreams, which they should also keep a tiny part of them aware that let me do what I can do, which can make a difference, not for me, but for the community or the environment at large.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And whether you're a student or working professional, I'm sure this conversation will leave you something to ponder upon. Until next time, stay sharp, stay questioning, and this is Kunal Gupta signing off. Thank you.